Okay, just a very quick video to explain the difference and the meaning of a domain and a range of a function. So quite simply, at its core, the domain of a function is a list of all inputs. What are all the possible values I can put into my function and expect to get an output? And as we'll see with a couple of examples in a second, not all functions allow all inputs. Sometimes putting a number into a function won't actually get you an output. And we'll show you that in a second. A range, on the other hand, is a list of all outputs. So when I put a number into a function or a value into a function, what am I expecting to get out of it? Okay, let's have a look at these three examples. 1 over x, 1 over 3x, and sine of x. And let's have a look what the domain and the range of each of these will be. So starting with 1 over x. What are all possible values I can put into this function? Well, you might be saying, well, I can put anything into this function, right? I can put 1 over 4 or 1 over 1,032,000. I can put 1 over a quarter. I can put anything in here. And whilst technically you're right, in this case, there is one number or one value that we cannot put into this and expect a result. Remember, the domain is if I have this function and I put it into my calculator, what numbers am I not going to get a value for? So for 1 over x, it's pretty simple. Whenever we have a fraction, the number one thing that we need to be thinking is I cannot have a 0 on the denominator of my fraction. It is impossible to divide by 0. So I can put any value I want into this equation and my calculator will give me a value unless that value is 0. So my x value, all possible x values are that x is not 0. Anything else is fine. I can put any other number into x and I will get a value, I will get an output. As a result of that, the range of this function is anything, right? I can pick any other x value, put it into here, and I can end up with any other y value. Doesn't matter what it is. There will be a value for x that I can put into this equation to get a value of y out. So my value of y, I can just write something like that. It can be anything. All real numbers, this is. What about, and I'm going to change this actually, I had 1 over 3x originally, I'm going to change it to 1 over 3 plus x to illustrate something different. So 1 over 3 plus x, we've got a fraction, which means I should immediately be thinking I cannot have a divisible by 0. The bottom cannot be 0. So if I would write that out, 3 plus x cannot equal 0. So if 3 plus x can't equal 0, then what's the one value that x can't take? Well, it can't take a minus 3. Because if x is minus 3, 3 minus 3 is 0. I have a 0 on the bottom. Not going to work. But my x can take anything else. My x can be 0, unlike this case, because if x was 0, 1 over 3, that gets me a number, that gets me an output. So 3 plus x can't equal 0, so my domain is that x cannot equal minus 3. Similarly, to the last one, the range here, it's not controlled. There's no limits on my range. I can get a value for x, and I have an infinite amount of values for x, as long as it's not minus 3. That will get me an infinite number of values for y. So once again, y can be anything. Now, the last one is slightly different, sine of x. Once again, think of it like this. What can I put into my calculator, into x, into this equation to get an answer? Just any answer. If the calculator gives you an answer, it's good. Well, I can do sine of 1, I can do sine of a half, I can do sine of 4,356,000 if I want. I can type any number into x and my calculator will give me an answer. So for sine of x, my domain is everything, any real number, and imaginary, but that's not the point. I can put any real number into sine of x and it will give me a value. But can I get any possible output. Are there restrictions on the outputs of sine? Well, yes, there are. No matter what number I put into sine of x, it will never go above 1 and it will never go below -1, right? We should know this from the graph. We have the graph of sine x. It never goes higher than 1, it never goes lower than -1, but it continues on infinitely in both directions. My domain, my input, my x value goes on forever. My range, my output, or my y value gets cut off at 1 and cut off at -1. So the range for sine of x is y has to be less than or equal to 1 or greater than or equal to -1.